So here's a little session on understanding rate plans. We're just going to run through a rate plan from start to finish on how to set it up. So first of all, what's a rate plan used for? So before we go into it, it's used for billing outbound telephone calls, it's used for billing inbound telephone calls, and it's also used for billing transaction charges. So things like if you add on a hunt group, a queue, or a Mobex, it gives you the opportunity, if you want to, you don't have to, but it gives you the opportunity to charge for these extra items if you decide to create a rate plan with these items in. So let's dive straight in. So you can find the rate plans under Commerce, go down to Rate Plans, and you can see in here that we actually already have a rate plan set. I'm going to create a new one from scratch just to see what it's like. So I click New. First of all, it comes up with the plan name. This is the most important thing, so let's just give it a quick name. Okay, once you've entered a name, you've then got quite a lot of options to choose from. Probably the most important item is to actually inherit from another rate plan that already exists. Now, clearly, if this is the first rate plan that you're setting up and you haven't got one that you can inherit from, then you will need to set up quite a lot of settings yourself. However, if you inherit from another rate plan, what that allows you to do is to actually take the rates from another rate plan and pull them into this rate plan, and it uses the rates from the other rate plan if nothing's set within this rate plan. So it's a really easy way to duplicate a rate plan and then just make a small change to the new rate plan for any items that you want. But I think what we'll do in this case, we won't set it by inheriting it from another rate plan. What we're going to do is we're just going to create this from its own rate plan. So let's work down the list. So some of these are pretty obvious. You might want to put a description in here, what it's for. So for instance, I might put in here, I'm going to create a rate plan and include some minutes in this rate plan. So I'm going to call this the 2,000 minute rate plan, and I'm going to include mobile and national calls. So 2,000 minute plan with mobile and national calls. It just gives you a bit of a help to understand what's actually built within this rate plan. Okay, so some options down here. Do you want to allow resellers to inherit the rate plan just like you can above up here? Obviously, if you're setting this up for your own customers, then you don't need to set this. And also, do you want resellers to assign? Again, you don't need to set this at all. The currency is set in UK pounds, but it is possible to actually to pick another currency. But because we're based in the UK, we're going to put this in UK pounds. With regards to invoicing, what do you want to do with invoices when they become due? Okay, so immediately after being issued, you can choose. Invoices become due after, okay, you can actually set however many days you want this to become due. So for instance, if an invoice is due after 14 days, you can set that in here. But as you can see, you can pick a number of different sections, a number of different days to decide on what you want to do. Invoices become overdue after, so you can set that as well. So you might say invoices become overdue after 30 days, so you can set that. Billing period. Now, most telecoms companies run billing periods monthly, so I would probably suggest you leave that set to monthly, but you can actually choose different billing periods and it will bill every 3 months if you want. So here's another important one. Billing of features starting next billing period. Now, what that will do is, let's say you're charging £10 a month for a service and you've got this set to yes, then what it will do, if you set the customer up and you've set them up on, say, the 16th of the month, it will not charge £10 until the following month. So you're actually giving them days of billing for free. So we always suggest that you leave this set to no. So then what will happen is that if you set the customer up on the 16th of the month then it will do a pro rata charge for that period and add it to next month's bill on top of the £10 charge that are going to be charged for the next month moving forward. So for instance, if you're in, say, June, and you set it up on the 16th of June, then the 1st of July, on the customer's invoice of the 1st of July, they will get the charge, the part charge from the 16th of June through to the 30th of June, and then they will then be billed from the 1st of July for the whole month onwards. So that's an important one to do. And definitely worth, in my opinion, leaving that set to no so you build extra revenue. The choice is simply yes or no. Minimum contract period. This is really just for internal notes. So it's up to you whether you want to select that, just so that you know, customers, you're aware that if you put a customer on this plan, it's for a minimum term. Sending invoices each billing period. Okay, at the moment it's set to no as default. We suggest that you set this to queue within web interface. This will allow you to double check those invoices until you set them to automatic. Okay, so meaning that once the customer's happy, once you're happy with the invoice, then you can set this to email customers automatically. But we suggest that you set it to queue within the web interface. You can also set some of these settings on the customer's settings too. So some of these will be duplicated within the customer's settings. So there's something to keep in mind there. Again, you've got invoice format, very straightforward. PDF seems to be the most popular one, or can use XML. Invoice details, so transactions and calls sort by date. But there are quite a number of different options there. Summary only, if you don't want to particularly show them what's going on, or even just show transactions. But we set it as standard as show transactions and calls sorted by date and time. Customer service email address. Okay, so basically emails will be duplicated to this customer service email address, you know, or if a customer replies, then it will reply back to this customer service email address. Copy customer service on emails to customers. You can set that to yes or no. Customer service telephone number. So what this allows the customer to do is that when they are out of credit, it will dial this particular number. So for instance, you may want to put in your main office number. And then that will then divert any calls that are out of credit, or when the customer is locked, it will divert to this number. That works with this part here, which is divert calls to customer services when locked or out of credit, yes or no. Again, I suggest you set that to yes. From a tax point of view, with regards to rounding, we always suggest you round it to the nearest penny for an end user, because that makes it nice. Now, this is an important one from a fraud protection point of view. Okay, you can set the maximum money that can be spent on a customer in any one day. So again, as default, we suggest you set it to £100. This means that all of the extensions on the customer that's set on this rate plan can make a maximum between all of the extensions of £100. So if there's any ever fraud activity, you know that at the RRP rate of the customer that you're not going to be charged, or you're not going to be making any more than £100 worth of calls. You can, of course, lower that down and bring it down to, say, £50, but you really do need to make sure that you've got enough credit in there for the customer to make on a per day basis. Obviously, £100 worth of calls a day, you know, is 3,100 a month. It's quite a lot of money that a customer can be spending. Keep in mind that whilst this might be the maximum amount of money they can spend per day, this still doesn't affect the customer's credit limit. Okay, that's within the customer setup, and under the customer settings, you will actually set the maximum credit limit they're allowed to have. So obviously, if you set a customer to say £300 spend a month, then just because this is set to £100 a day, it doesn't mean that they can make £3,000 worth of calls in a month. It simply means that the maximum spend per day could go up to £100 a day. If you're creating this rate plan as a sign up or a top up account, so a prepay top up account, then you can set within this plan what you want that to be. So for instance, minimum they can top up is say £50, and you would just simply set that in there. Then there's a few bits of functionality within this rate plan. Okay, for instance, purge voicemails after whatever. So might say, well, I only want them to keep a year's worth of voicemails and faxes. You can set that there. You can also set maximum allowance of voicemail messages per mailbox. Allow caller ID from external calls. You can set that in here for inbound calls. False all calls via a particular outbound peer. Okay, so we suggest that you just leave that set to routing exceptions. Maximum minutes of call recordings to be kept. So if you particularly want to set up a customer to only have, say, 1,000 minutes of call recording, then you can set in here how many minutes they're allowed to record on this rate plan. You've got the choice whether you want to show the CDR costs on the CSV download that you get when the customer's generating calls. You can set that there. Okay, now down to default markups. So default markups, this is where if you don't apply any pricing within the rate plan to do with incoming or outgoing calls, this section will automatically mark up the charges that you're being charged for your calls by this set amount. So for instance, if you're quite happy making 25% on every one of these, just as a default value, in case you've forgotten to add a price for, say, an outbound call, then you can set that in here. Next section, included in the rate plan. So again, you can decide in here if you want to include minutes in the rate plan, okay? Because we set this up here to 2,000 minutes, then we are going to add some free minutes within this rate plan to allow them to make outbound calls. This is based on a per customer basis, so not an extension basis. This is for the whole customer that you are putting this rate plan on. So for instance, we've said 2,000 minutes. I'm going to set 2,000 minutes here. Do I want to carry forward call time, in one billing period? Again, I suggest you set this to no, because, if they haven't used the minutes, then you've made the extra money on the minutes. You don't want to keep allowing them to build up thousands and thousands of minutes of calls that they can use at any one time. So I suggest you set this to no. Same with messaging. You can allow so many messages per billing period. And again, you can decide whether you want to carry those forward or not. But again, we suggest you set that to no. For new customers, you can set up through the sign up wizard some details in here. Most people are not allowing the customers to auto sign up. So this complete section, I would suggest that you just leave this as it is, as no one tends to use this section for automatic sign-ups anymore. People tend to set the customers up on the rate plans themselves. Again, within this rate plan, you can set a default class of service, which, at the moment is set to allow everything, but you could, if you like, for instance, allow external calls but forbid internal calls. Why you would want to do that is not entirely sure, but if you particularly wanted to say, make everybody forced to dial out to chargeable numbers, even if they want to ring each other internally, then you could, in theory, do that. This is probably another important one down here, maximum calls, okay? So what you're able to do here is limit the number of calls a customer can make or receive on their setup. So for instance, you might say, as a total maximum, I want it to be no more than, say, 6. and you can then say no limit on inbounds, which means in theory they could have up to 6 inbound calls, no limit on outbound calls, so in theory they could have up to 6. Okay, obviously if they've got 6 outbound calls going on, then they'll have no inbound calls coming in. Okay, because at this point they would be hitting the maximum channels, and any other calls would get rejected. So for instance, what you may want to do, for instance, if this was a doctor's surgery, I would definitely suggest that you limit down the number of concurrent channels they can use. So let's say you've agreed 10. But what you might want to do is say the maximum of inbound calls that they can receive is, say, 7. So there's always a number of outbound calls that they can make to dial out. There's a number of channels available that they can then dial out. So now what's going to happen here? Can't make or receive any more than 10 concurrent calls. We can receive a maximum of 7 inbound calls, and there's no limit set to the amount of outbound calls. So for instance, if there's only 5 inbound calls coming on, we could make 5 outbound. But what we definitely know is that by setting the inbound to 7, we will be allowed to make up to 3 outbound calls, which I think is a great way to go. So that's the first page there done. Let's save that. And let's return to the rate plan. And now you can see that with our rate plan has appeared atop. ABC plan, 2,000 minutes plan with mobile and national calls. So the issue here is we haven't actually included those mobile and national calls. So we now need to go into the plan and add those on. So let's click back into the plan. All this remains the same. We go to the bottom of the page and you can now see there's another huge amounts of features at the bottom here that you can add in here. So let's go through them one by one. So charges, let's click on that. Okay, so adding a charge. Why would we add a charge within a rate plan? So let's say this rate plan, you just wanted to make a standard charge every time a customer takes this rate plan. This charge will go onto the customer's bill on whatever you added here. So let's say that you want to insist that every customer takes maintenance, then within this plan you can add a charge in. So we'll click new and we'll call it maintenance. And then you've got a choice of how often you want this to happen. So if you wanted it to be a setup fee, for instance, of say £100, you could call it a setup fee and then just put a charge in there for £100, and that will just go on the bill once. But because this is maintenance and it's going to be monthly, let's change the name of it and call it monthly maintenance so it makes more sense. And now we can make this occur more often. So we can say we want this to occur every month, starting from this date, right the way through to 2041. Could take it up to 2099, which would be quite nice, so you'll never have to change it again. And how do we want this to work? Do we want it to start at the beginning of the next month, or do we want it to take a pro rata payment? So a bit like when you were asked whether you want to bill from the date that you add the services on, this will do the same thing. So if you activate this rate plan on a customer and save it against the customer, and you set this to yes, then what will happen is that on the 16th of June, they will be part charged this monthly maintenance charge of whatever you set it below. So down below, I'm now going to set this to £38.50. You can apply a cost in there if you like, just so you've got an idea of how much money you're making out of it. Also, if you've got any dealers or any affiliates that you're giving a share of the money to, then you probably would want to put the cost here to you, so that obviously you keep some of that money and only share the difference. So if I say the cost is £28.50, we've now made £10 profit in theory, as there's a cost of £28.50. And when we look at the affiliates on a customer setting, then you can set that, and let's say you set that to 50%, then the affiliate will get £5 of the profit. So I'm going to save that, turn to list of charges. You can now see in there that we've got this charge that will go out every month to that customer who's set on this rate plan. Let's go back to rate plans and let's look at the next one. Custom settings. So in here, we've got the option to be able to build what the invoice looks like, what the way emails are going out, and there are hundreds and hundreds of various different options in here for you to select. I'm not going to go through them all because I think a lot of them are fairly obvious. So you've got things like alert email body, you can drop that in there. How do you want it to appear? All customers recursively, only customers directly on this rate plan, or all customers recursively except those directly on this rate plan. So I'm just going to go all customers recursively in case anybody selects this plan further down the line and wants to inherit from this plan. Click next. It then gives me what looks like a lot of gobbledygook, but this is actually how the email is formatted when it goes out. So you need to be aware and a little bit or understand what's actually happening on here. I'm simply going to click save because all the settings in there are fine. Okay. And there we've got one alert body going out. Now, when somebody gets an alert, they will get the various information that's loaded within that body to attach to the email. So as I say, there's quite a lot of various different ones on here, all the way down to even how notification is sent out for voicemail. There's tons that you can set up in here. What's said on a call recording. So you can be really specific about what you want to say to people in various different scenarios. This is probably why it's a good idea to inherit the settings from another rate plan, because most of these, once you've set them once, will just be inherited and you don't need to set them again. But the good thing is that if you inherit from another rate plan and then you decide that you want to change something to do with, I don't know, let's say the voicemail notification, you can actually change the email header just for this rate plan, and it will take everything the same from the other rate plan apart from these particular items. Let's go back to rate plans again. So now we've got features. Now this is where you allow what the customer can see within this rate plan. And again, there's quite a lot of various ones on here that you can select. I'm not going to go through them all, okay? But this is what allows them to activate and use some of the features. As you can see, most of them are set to allow. There are a few ones in here that are set to forbid. So for instance, like setting the original caller ID, we always suggest that you keep that locked to forbid. Setting their own currency, you wouldn't want them changing it from pounds to dollars because you want to bill them in the currency that you're comfortable with. So as I say, most of the settings in here are generally set to what is recommended. There's probably not a lot you need to change in here at all. And again, on some of these settings, you can set a number within the amount that you want them to create. So for instance, if we have a quick look at hunt groups, if I particularly wanted a customer only to have one hunt group, okay, I can say a maximum of one. Now they wouldn't be allowed to create any more than one hunt group. But I might actually say no limit, okay? And then you've got an option on here, what's included free in the rate plan. So you might say, well, actually, looking at the hunt group, I'm going to allow them to have one free hunt group, but I'm going to allow them to do unlimited. So I set that to 1. Okay. So now if you are billing or want to charge for hunt groups, then they will get one free of charge within this section, which is quite good. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to carry on editing the rate plan. Bottom of the page. Let's look at fees for features. So this again takes us back down to more billing information. So fees for features, okay? So again, like we set up the maintenance charge to be billed out on the customer's bill each month under charges, we could have just put that in here on creation and each billing period. The issue with this is that it doesn't really say much on the invoice. It just says service charge, I believe. So it's not really telling the customer or customer charge. So it's not really telling them what it's for, which is why I recommend that you really should put it into the charges rather than on this here. But one good thing that's here, you might say there's a minimum amount that the customer will be billed each month. So even if they don't quite make the number of calls, you can set this up to say, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I want at least £75 a month from the customer. That was the agreed charge. So we're going to take £75 off of the customer, even if they only spend £52. So again, some of these settings, I do recommend that you inherit from another plan so you don't have to keep changing these, because some of these are quite laborious. What changed a little while ago was when you call an 0800 number or an 0808 number from a mobile, there's a charge, a surcharge added to the inbound cost for that call, and that's where you add the cost here. And I believe it's quite expensive. It's something like 3p a minute. So, for your customer, you might say, well, I'm going to charge 5p a minute for the surcharge. So if a customer has got an 0800 number and they receive a call from a mobile, they're going to be charged a premium for that on top of your normal rate of 5p a minute. Then, not so long ago, also, Ofcom made it that there should be an access charge when ringing a non-geographic number. So these numbers are things that start, 08, 4, 087, 09, and 118. So these access numbers also have a charge on them. So you may want to charge that to the customer. I believe the charge to the resellers are a penny, and we suggested that you charge 2p on top, so you might want to charge 2p. You might want to check that, but that's what I think is the right rate. Now you've got all the different fees for the different items that you want, okay? So this is on creation on the left. So here is on creation, and here is each billing period. So what we've tried to do is allow you to bill anything you like. So again, hunt groups is a good example. On creation, do you want to charge for that? Yes, I do. I want to charge £10 and I want to charge £2.50 a month. So every time a customer within this rate plan sets up a hunt group, they're going to be charged £10 one off and £2.50 a month. There you can see that we've now created the hunt group, and it's going to charge the £10 and £2.50, and don't forget it's going to give one free hunt group to start off with, which is quite a nice little touch to the way this you can build a rate plan. But again, there's lots of things that you can charge for or include. It is entirely up to you. There's some settings on here that you will be charged for from us as the upstream provider, things like analytics. So I definitely recommend that you charge for that. Handset wall boards, you want to be charging for that. But again, if you inherit the settings, it makes it so much easier for these prices to automatically be selected and shown with, from the rate plan that you're inheriting it from. So we've got a outbound dialer, which you can add extra costs on if you want to for when people are using the outbound dialer. Most people leave that set as normal charge. But this one is a very, very important one, which is the call recording charges. So this is a very important one here, call recording. And you definitely need to make sure you've got your prices in here, unless, of course, you are inheriting it from the rate plan that you're inheriting it from. So, for instance, currently we charge you 0.4 of a penny to record and 0.2 of a penny to store. So on creation, which is meaning as you make the call recording, we're going to charge you 0.4 of a penny. Okay, so you now need to charge your customers, a sensible rate. I would recommend 1p. So 1p per minute will be charged for call recording. And then for each period of storage, okay, in the next month's storage. So for instance, if you make 100 minutes of calls in June, and then you build for it for storage in July, then you will be charged a pence per minute for that storage. You are charged zero point 0.2 of a penny for storage. So we recommend you probably charge, say, half a pence for storage. Okay. So what will happen is that each month that you keep your call recordings, you will be charged half a pence per minute per month for storage. Click save. Inbound call cost exceptions. It is highly recommended that you inherit from another rate plan so you don't have to change all these settings. But let's say, for instance, that you particularly want to charge a different rate for a customer for receiving calls to an 0800 number. So what you would need to do is you would need to click New, find the 0800 numbers that we're referring to. And as you can see on here, there is quite a number of sections to fill in here. So you would need to do all of them from here all the way up to here. So I'm going to click on 0800 170 0, and this is the inbound group where these numbers sit. You may want to add this rate at the end of the month. Okay, I can actually change the date on here when I want this rate to kick in, and it will start charging from that rate moving forward. Most people just do it immediately. And then down here is where you add the charges. So connection fee on answer. So if you want to charge a connection fee, you can do that. Simply put it in here. So you might want to charge a penny on answer, for instance. Then you can decide when do you want to start billing the call from. So normally 0 is the correct time to bill it from. But let's say on the connection you want to make it, say, 10 pence, but you want to allow them to have, I don't know, let's say 3 minutes of calls included. You could change that to 180 seconds. And now what will happen is it means that they will be charged 10 pence per call as it comes in. They will get the first 180 seconds free of charge, and then it will be worked out on a cost per minute after that. But again, most people tend to leave it set at 0 for connection. They leave this set at 0 so it starts billing immediately. And the most important one is to put in here, a charge that you want to charge per minute. So let's say we're going to charge 8 pence a minute for inbound calls to an 0800 number. And then we can decide how we want to bill that. So do we want to bill it by the second, or do we want to bill it in one of these increments? Okay, so I might want to bill it every minute. So if I want to bill it every minute, then, if the customer makes a call that's 38 seconds long, we don't care. We're still going to charge them 60 seconds worth of calls, and we're going to charge them 8 pence a minute for that 60 seconds, even though they only used 38. So if I use 61 seconds, we're going to bill them for 2 minutes, and that'd be 16 pence. Again, you can add in here, if you want, minimum call costs. So for instance, you might say, well, I'm charging 8 pence a minute, but actually every call is going to be a minimum of 20 pence. You could put it in there, and then that way that makes sure that you're charging the customer 20 pence minimum per call. So I'll click save on that. One little tip here is if you press the back button on your browser, it takes you back to where you was before with all the settings before. Now it allows you to go to the top here, drop down, grab the next one in the list, which is the evening calls, and you may want to adjust this evening call rate to, say, 6 pence a minute. I'm still going to leave it billing at a minimum cost of 20 pence and click save. And again, if you press the back button again, you can pick the next one down in the list and go weekends. And this one's going to be at, say, 4 pence a minute. Save. If I return to the list of exceptions now, you will now see that those 3 have appeared in the list. If I now want to add the rest of the 0800 numbers, because I might want to pick one from a different 0800 list. You can see in here that 0800 170 has disappeared. And I can now add the next one in the list, which is 711. So the number range 711. You may want to charge a different rate for these particular numbers. So for instance, I don't want to charge anything but a pence per minute rate of 10 pence a minute. Save. And again, I'm not going to press the return button, I'm going to press the back button, and I'm going to add each one of those very quickly. It appears up there, the one that you've already added, so keep that in mind because the page hasn't refreshed yet. So we just click save, back again, the next one down, save. Now when I return to the list of exceptions, you can see we've got them all in there. So that's inbound numbers, and again, you can add a multiple of different inbound numbers. I do, as I say, strongly suggest that you inherit from different rate plans so that you don't have to worry about all these different numbers in here, because a lot of the numbers are to do with just normal numbers from a geographic number. So for instance, we may come down to here and find Romford. If you particularly wanted to charge a customer for inbound calls to a Romford number, you could do that if you really wanted to. But the suggestion is that most inbound calls come in free of charge, apart from non-geographic calls. Again, we've got some international numbers on here as well that you may want to allow people to have, and you may want to charge a pence per minute for some of these international numbers. So that's inbound call costs. Let's go back to the rate plan. Inbound included in call time exceptions. So we've allowed this customer to have call time of 2,000 minutes. If I now click on inbound included in call time exception, I can now click new. I can decide what ones are inclusive. So for instance, if I want to include this one, for instance, and it counts towards the minutes. So whilst I might be charging 10 pence a minute for them to receive a call, I'm now saying that if they receive a call of one of their 2,000 minutes that I'm charging as part of the call bundle, they will get this 0800 call free of charge. So I would probably recommend not having that at all, clicking it and deleting it. Really, inclusive minutes are designed for outbound calling, which takes us on to the next section. Again, I strongly recommend that you inherit from another rate plan because there are thousands of outbound call groups that you would need to put into here. Let me quickly show you. No one wants to be putting all of these in because they'll just take forever. But let's just put a couple in just so you can see what you need to do it. What you can do is you can click on it and actually type UK if you particularly want to dial some of the UK ones, which takes you straight down to the UK part. And then we're looking for UK national. Okay, so what we're looking for here are these ones down here, UK national. I'm going to click on that. As I say, so what you're able to do is you're actually able to inherit from another rate plan. Let's say you're inheriting from another rate plan, and that's normally at 1 pence a minute. But because this rate plan is including 3 minutes, okay, so the customer's getting 2,000 minutes allowed. We haven't said what yet, but we did say in the description mobile and national. What we can do here is, rather than charging a penny a minute like we would charge other customers because we're inheriting from another rate plan, what we can do here, we can say, because these ones have had minutes free of charge, I want to charge them a slightly higher rate. So what the system will do, it's clever enough to say, I'm going to inherit every single price, every single outbound exception apart from these ones that we're putting in now. And these ones we're gonna create new ones for this particular rate plan. So in here, I'm gonna say, okay, we normally charge a penny a minute. I don't want to do that. I want to charge 3p a minute for this particular rate plan. Because let's face it, if they go past the 2,000 inclusive minutes, why shouldn't we charge them a premium for extra minutes? So that's what I'm going to do in now. Okay. Because you can send text messages out, it is strongly recommended that you put a charge in there for text messages, maybe 10p a minute. So if anyone decides to send a text message from the platform, it will charge out at 10p a minute. Click save. Again, use the little trick or cheat, press the back button, select the next one down, which is UK off-peak. I'm still going to leave that at 3p a minute. Back button again, find the peak, sorry, the weekend, should I say, save. Now we've got 3 exceptions in there that actually are overriding anything that we inherit from another rate plan. So it's quite nice that you can actually take a rate plan, inherit all the settings, and then say, do you know what, I'm just going to make a little change just to a couple of prices on here. So again, let's just quickly choose a mobile one. So let's go new and go UK mobile. Just takes me down to M. I mean, we want to, let's just say do EE for a minute. And because mobiles are expensive to ring, we're going to charge this at, say, 10p a minute. We would normally say charge 7p a minute, but because this one's got inclusive minutes, we're going to charge 10p. So this one will override the inheriting settings on the system. Again, I'm going to quickly just copy those 3 times. Now, if we look at the pricing again, you can see on here that we've now got UK mobile EE at 10p a minute, UK national at 3p a minute. And like I say, this will override the rate plan that you are inheriting from if you are inheriting. Okay, so let's go back to the rate plan again. We're getting down to the final sections now. Outbound inclusive in call time. So this is what's going to work with this section up here. So we've got 2,000 minutes. So for outbound, we're going to say, if somebody rings a national call, we're going to allow that to be part of the call plan. So we need to find UK national, which is this one here, 01 and 02, and that counts towards the minutes within this rate plan. Yes. I'm going to press the back button because I can do the little cheat on that as well. And I'm going to find the mobile at the top here. And you really want to add these mobile ones here. So EE, in fact, if you go to the bottom of the list, it makes it simpler. So if you go Vodafone, save, and then press the back button. Telefonica, save, back button. Orange, save, back button. Hutchinson, save, back button. And EE, save, and then return to the list of exceptions. Now you can see in there that if anyone calls one of these destinations, they're allowed to have 2,000 inclusive minutes within this customer rate plan. So if they've got 10 extensions, they can share the 2,000 minutes between all of the extensions. Okay, so back to rate plan again. Down to the bottom of the page. What can we do? So here's an important button. We can make a copy of this rate plan if we want to, and it will make a total copy of that plan, even if it's inheriting settings from another rate plan. It won't show you the inherited settings, but it will inherit the settings just like the other plan was doing. So if I want to do that, I can just press copy and it will generate a new rate plan. And then returns back. And there you go, we've got a copy of a rate plan. And that should have all the different settings that we've put in there including things like your outbound call exceptions. So like I say, it's another good way. If you've already generated a rate plan and you want to make quite a few changes to it, then you can copy a rate plan that you've already got and make the changes to the copied rate plan rather than trying to start one from scratch. Because starting one from scratch, as you can see, is quite labour intensive. Notes just allows you to put a few little notes in, and it just stores it for you. And you might say here, okay, 12th of the 6th, 2021. You might say, I added extra exceptions. So return to notes. All it's doing is just putting a little note in there so you can see what's gone on. And I've done that within that copy rate plan anyway. So let's return to the main rate plan that we were working on. So another important one is number classes. So what are number classes? Well, number classes are what you charge for a number, okay? As in, if they take a geographic number from you, like an 01708 number, within the system, we charge different rates for different classes of number, okay? And what do we mean by classes? Well, we have things like normal, silver, bronze, gold, platinum. And what you're able to do is you're able to set a charge for what you charge a customer for those different types of numbers. So let's just click new and show you exactly what I mean. So these are all the ones that are in the system that you can pick from. So in this case, we're going to pick normal. We charge you a setup fee of £5 one-off and 50 pence a month. So my suggestion is that you charge £10 sign up, and then you charge, say, £1 or £1.50 a month. So what will happen now is that if a customer takes a number, or you allocate a number to a customer, they're going to be charged £10 one-off for activating the number, switching the number on, and then they're going to be charged £1.50 a month for each month that that number is in use. So it's not anything to do with receiving calls, it's to do with actually having the number hosted on the platform. If they take 10 numbers, then they're going to pay £100 activation and £15 a month for the numbers. That's a normal number. If we want to charge them for, say, a bronze number, let's say that one's £25 a month, and that one's £1.50 as well. Save, go back. On the back button, I can just select a different one. Silver, that one's going to be £45 with £1.50 a month. Gold might be £75, £1.50 a month. And the final one, which is going to be for us, the platinum one, which I'm going to charge £100 set up, but I'm actually going to charge £2.50 a month because it's a better number. It might be a number with more zeros in it, or 6699, for example. I'm going to click save on that to return to the numbers. So as you can see, within this rate plan, we've now got 5 different number classes. Now, if you don't add the number class in here, then the customer will be charged exactly what we charge you. So it is fairly important that you make sure that you've got these charges in there so that you are charging the customer what you want to charge them. Obviously, if you're using an external rate plan, this isn't so important, but it does help with credit control and stuff like that. It saves a customer, adding 25 numbers on at your expense because you're going to get billed for it, and they might not get billed because you haven't put it on their pricing. So at least if you add these prices in, it will give you some kind of idea. But again, I recommend that you simply inherit from another rate plan so you get all these preloaded automatically. So let's go back to rate plans. So we're back in rate plans. Let's click back on our rate plan that we were looking at. Let's go to the bottom of the page. So in routes, okay, if I add a route in here, this is where I can allow the calls or disallow the calls. So I might decide that any call starting 00, I'm going to forbid. No one on this rate plan will be able to make an international call because I've barred 00. So this is like a customer class of service, but it's based on the rate plan instead, which is quite nice. It's a routing service for the rate plan. Again, most people have a default setting. They might want to bar, say, 09 numbers because 09 numbers are generally expensive. So we bar 09 on there and we click forbid. So now whoever's on this rate plan can't dial international calls or 09 calls because generally them ones are expensive. So why are rate plans so important and why should they be set up? Because this is probably the pressing question that you should be asking yourself. Well, what rate plans are used for? They're a great way of controlling fraud. And what do we mean by that? Well, because we set limits within this rate plan, it means that if a customer's handset or setup gets compromised through a fault of their own or through a mistake that you as the reseller have made, this allows you to have some kind of call costs control on what's going on. Even if you use an external billing system, it is highly recommended that you at least use a default rate plan within this system so that you are not exposed to too much fraud or any fraud, because the system will help you control the customer. So what do we actually mean by that? Where's the fraud protection in here? Well, let me show you. So within the customer rate plan, we've already said only allow a maximum of £100 worth of calls a day, which is brilliant. And keep in mind that that's at the customer's rate, and some of those rates we were setting at 10 pence a minute. So if a customer really did get compromised and they started making a lot of calls, then £100 worth of calls at the RRP rate would actually lock their telephony quite quickly. The other thing that we've done, obviously, on here to give us a little bit of protection as well, we can allow the maximum number of simultaneous calls that this rate plan can make. So again, that's a good way of locking down fraud, because if someone compromises a handset and starts making or try to making thousands of calls from that particular login, you know, it's locked down on here to a maximum of 10 simultaneous calls. So, you know, if they try to do it at night, then they'd be making a maximum of 10 simultaneous calls until they run out of credit. And if they were making international calls or trying to make international calls, then they would probably be ringing premium rate international numbers and it would run out of credit quite quickly. But of course, what else have we done on here to prevent a little bit of fraud? Again, in routes, we've said no 00 calls. So again, if they got compromised and they tried to make calls outbound internationally, then the system would block them from doing that, which again is a great way of giving you some kind of fraud control. Okay, so great way of fraud protection there too, by locking down the destinations that they can ring. So now, how do we apply this rate plan to a customer? How do we get a new customer or an existing customer to use this rate plan? Well, the way we need to do that is we need to go into commerce again, customers. And as you can see, I've got a number of customers on here already. Let's simply add this rate plan to one of our existing customers on here. And what I'm going to do now, scroll down to where it says rate plans, which is billing down here. And at the moment, this one's currently on master plan. As you can see, there's a load of extra plans in here that you can choose from that we've allowed you to inherit from us as the upstream provider, but your plans appear at the top here. So you can see that the copied one's up there, but I want to use the ABC plan, and I'm going to select that there. And I'm going to click save. I'm just going on fraud protection, there's a lot you can do within this customer setting here to allow that, and I think it's important to add this part onto the rate plan explanation here. So what's important when working with rate plans and the customer settings? Let's take a little look. So quite a lot of the stuff in here is duplicated in the rate plan too. But the reason why it's duplicated in the rate plan is because, whilst you might say, well, I'm quite happy with this customer using this rate plan, but I'm not quite happy with the number of channels that I want to allow this customer to have, as opposed to a different customer that's using the same rate plan. You can set in here, for instance, the maximum number of concurrent calls that this customer can use. So for instance, here we've got maximum concurrent inbound, maximum concurrent outbound, and maximum concurrent total calls. So again, you could choose, rather than setting it in the rate plan, if you particularly want to change it on a per customer basis, then you can actually go to every customer under the customer settings and change it in here. So for instance, I'm going to change it in here. Instead of saying use rate plan, I'm going to change this particular customer to say I only want them to have 8 calls, but I'm quite happy for them to receive 8 inbound or receive 8 or make 8 outbound calls. I'm just going to lock them down to 8. So now, although the rate plan says that they can have 10, this part is actually overriding it and saying that it will only allow 8. So that's quite good. Again, another one here for fraud protection, maximum call spend per day. So in the rate plan, we've got it set at 100. This is a school. I don't think they're going to be making any more than £25 worth of calls a day. So let's lock them down to £25 worth of calls today. You can see up here, you've got, again, some protection here. You can lock the web interface so the customer themselves can't log in and make any changes if you particularly want to do that. And if you manually want to lock the telephony, what this will do is this will stop the customer making and receiving inbound and outbound calls. So if you set that to yes, this customer will no longer be able to make outbound calls or receive inbound calls. If we go further down, you can see down here we've also got a credit limit. So again, although we've said £100 worth of calls a day on the rate plan, in fact we lowered it up here to £25 worth of calls spend per day, they still can't do any more than what the credit limit says here, which is currently set at £500. If the customer balance goes below £500, then they will not be able to make outbound calls. So to give you an example, if we switch this on so they're not locked, and I click save, let's go back to the customer. So we've now got maximum call spend of £25, maximum amount of channels that they can use of 8. So we're really locking this customer down. We come lower down. If we now change this customer to less than £7.81, so if we change this to £6 and click save, at that point, the customer will be able to receive calls, but they wouldn't be able to make any calls because they've gone past their credit limit. What you will also notice on this customer is they've got this thing called call time left. Now, because we're halfway through the month and we've now created this customer on, it hasn't actually calculated out the minutes on this customer. So you would need to manually add the minutes on for this month if you want to charge the customer for the minutes that are inclusive in their bundle. Or it will just simply start next month. So let's say we're halfway through the month. We just want to give them a few minutes to make outbound calls. I'm going to give them halfway through the month, so let's give them 1,000 minutes. We go look down here now. The customer's now got 1,000 minutes to make outbound calls, and the limits jump back to 500 because I never saved it. What does that mean then? Well, that means that the customer's now has got some control, or rather you as the reseller have got some control over the customer's credit limits, how many calls they can make, what type of calls they can make. So it's a really good way of doing fraud protection for your clients. So we highly recommend that you set a rate plan and that you, even if you use a default rate plan, you use those settings just to help you protect you and your customer against fraud. I hope that's been useful, and if you've got any questions, then please contact sales or support, and any one of us will be happy to help. Thank you.